Good morning, friends. Now we are discussing tidal power plants. So, what is tide? So, there will be rise and fall of the water level in the sea. So, that rise and fall in the water level will be carried because of the action of the sun and the moon. So there will be two types of tides here. So there is the flood tide and the other one is the ebb tide. So when there is a rise in the water level, so that is in the tide. So that is called as the flood tide. So when there is a fall in the sea level, so that is known as the ebb tide. So that is the drop of the level. So in the flood tide, so there is rise of level. In the ebb tide, so there is the drop of the level. So that one complete cycle of this rise and fall will be called as the tide. So tidal energy is contributing a significant portion among all the renewable energies in the nature. So, some part of this tidal energy will be effectively utilized. So, the kinetic energy possessed by the moving tides will be converted into the electrical energy. So, it will be an important source of hydropower. So the main feature of this tidal cycle is that there will be difference in the elevation of the water surface at the high tide and the low tide. So, what will be the origin and nature of this tidal energy? So, how the tides are produced? So, because of gravitational attraction of the moon and the sun, when the earth is rotating about its own axis and when the earth is revolving around the sun. So this gravitational attraction of the sun and the moon on the water present on the earth's surface will produce the tides. So the magnitude of the attraction so will depend on the mass of the tide and its distance. So which is given by Newton's law of gravitation. So this Newton's law of gravitation is stating that every object in the universe will get attracted to the other object with the help of a force. So when the sun and the moon are in the line, so then the gravitational attraction on the earth will combine and it will result in a spring tide. So when the sun and the moon are exactly at 90-degree, their gravitational attraction will pull the water in different directions and it will cause the neap tide. That is when the sun and moon are in the same line, so then the tide caused will be called as the spring tide. When the sun and moon are at perpendicular to each other, so their gravitational attraction will pull water in different directions. It will call the neap tide. So when we come to the tidal power plants, there will be three components we need to mention. One is the first one is dam, or we also call it as the barrage. So the function of this dam is to act as a barrier between the sea and the basin. So if you consider here on the left side we have the sea and on the right side we have the tidal basin. Now the dam is considering as the barrier in between the sea and the basin. Then the sluice ways. So here the sluice gates we have, so that by opening these gates, so the basin will be filled. So during the high tide, when there is a rise in the water level in the sea, so by opening the sluice gates, the excess sea water which is resulting in the high tide will be flowing towards the tidal basin. So and that sea water will be getting filled in this tidal basin, and it will empty the basin during the low tides. So that is there is low tide, so when the level of water is less in the sea, and from tidal basin, the excess water what we stored in the form of basin will be allowed to go back to the sea by opening the sluice gate. Then we have the powerhouse. So it is equipped with this powerhouse is equipped with the turbine and electrical generators and other auxiliary equipments. So as we mentioned, the sluice ways are the gate controlled devices. They are employed to fill the basin during the high tide. So that is when the high tides occur. So from the sea, the water will going to get filled in the tidal basin. And during the low tide, so the basin will be getting emptied. So then auxiliary equipments, turbines and generators are the main components of the powerhouse. So here we have the hydraulic turbine generator. So the powerhouse is equipped with turbine and generator and other auxiliary equipments. Then classification of the tidal plants. So first one is the single basin. Here the power will be generated not continuously, so only intermittently. So in this arrangement we have only one basin which is interacting with the sea. So we have only one basin on the right hand side. So that's why it is called as the single basin plant. So the two, that is the sea and the basin, are separated by the dam, and the flow between them is happening through the sluice ways, right? So which are conveniently located along the dam. So the rise and fall in the water level of the sea will be causing the potential head. So this water head will be responsible for power generation. So this single basin system will be further classified as high tide and low tides. So during the high tide, so that is when the sea level rises. So that is when we take the figure in the left hand side. So when there is high tide, so then the turbine valves are getting open and the sea water will flow into the basin. So the sea water is falling through the turbine blades, so and it is entering into the tidal basin. So thus electricity is generated. So this now the electricity is generated now when the sea water is entering into the basin. So the power gets generated till the level of the sea water and the basin getting equal. Then the sluice gets closed. There will be no inflow of water into the basin. So electricity generation also stopped. So that's why here we call it as the power generation is intermittently.